мягко говоря. Esteemed colleagues, we are going to continue our working day at the UCMC, and the topic of our next press conference is Israel and the Jewish card in the Crimea conflict in 2014-16, official policy, propaganda, and the media technologies. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Shymon Briman, Israeli editor of the Forum Daily, Lenin USA, Russian newspaper. You have the floor, sir. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Why I actually selected this topic is Israel and Crimean card in the Crimean conflict over the last 2 years, because I witnessed as a journalist and a historian the development of the events, and I could see that even my country, Israel, my nation or my ethnic group, Jewish people, they try to involve in this conflict, and like a tug of war game, they try to do something when the Israeli interests or likings or likes or dislikes be riveted to this or another side of the conflict. And those events very often indignated me, actually, cause indignation in myself, because some forces try to use this Jewish card of Israel for their own political objectives. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. From the point of view of Russia, in the very beginning of this Crimean conflict, for them it was very important to find the support in Israel and maybe on the whole, the world Jewry, let's say, for a number of reasons. Number one, Russia continuously has used different myths about Ukrainian fascists who came to power in Kiev. And that's why Moscow really hoped that Israel will actually take this bite. Because a priori it is understood that the Jewish people in Israel always going to fight fascism or be against fascism or all those terrible monsters who are named like nationalism people or fascists, etc. So the major part of Russian propaganda around Crimea was associated with such a myth that the Jewish pogroms are going to be staged or some kind of terrible actions are going to be carried out. And the authorities of Russia, who actually were preparing this special operation to capture the Crimea or to seize the Crimea or to annex the Crimea, they used some kind of different tools of intimidation, including the Jewish field. How they did that? There is a well-known fact on the eve of during the night of 28th of February 2014, they put the sign of swastiks and death to the Hebrews, Yeeds, and it has not been the case over the only 3 years of Ukraine independence, and specifically during that night when the Russian green creatures actually were found themselves in the Crimea. Somebody actually negotiates the defense and draws the swastika and some neo-Nazist symbols in the everything was accompanied by publications, all the Russian mass media, that they were that a lot of Jewish pogroms were in store for Jewish people in Ukraine. I believe this act by barbarians or vandalism during the first day of the capture of Crimea. I do not have 100% solid proofs or evidence. This can be only asserted or confirmed by those Moscow officers who planned this action. But even today, they didn't find the person who is guilty of those actions. The prosecutor office of the Crimea found some kind of homeless person who actually claimed a responsibility for this act of vandalism. But everybody knows that this is a fake. And there is an example of the fact, evidence of the fact that the special services of Russia or the former Soviet Union have a rich experience in such provocations. It's a well-known fact that back in 1950s or 1960s, they had such a special department, disinformation, misinformation, or subversive sabotage actions in the KGB, who were involved in such things. Okay, there are people specifically visited Jewish cemetery and synagogues of the Democratic Republic of Germany, and they drew signs of swastika there and the entire Jewish symbols. And then everybody was the cause of the hullabaloo about the, let's say, the eruption of anti-Semitism in Germany, just to defame the Konrad Adenauer, who was the then chancellor of the Germany. So they have this experience since the end of the 1950s. And this experience actually, they actually was the subject in the KGB schools as there's something, special achievement. So the mechanism is to come up with some kind of provocative actions, to do something about synagogue, and then Jews all over the world will raise the hullabaloo or the big noise about that. And they will blame Ukraine diaspora, who did not neglect this kind of happening or whatever else. So why this emphasis is being placed on this small Jewish minority in the Crimea? Why those provocations did not take place, I don't know, against those who reside in the Crimea, Romanians or Belarusians or any other ethnic groupings? Jewish population is 0.1% of the population of the Crimea. We're talking about a real small number of the people. The answer to this question is simple. It's everybody's knowledge in Moscow and also in Kyiv that in the West, for example, in the United States, the Jewish communities were influential. 6 million Jews are citizens of the United States, and they have a great impact or influence on the mass media and TV channels included, and the American policy makers. And the following scheme is used. For example, if we touch, let's say, some Jewish facility in the Crimea, the next day, New York Times has carried the articles and blaming Kyiv for this kind of disorders taking place in Crimea. So those who push the Jewish button in Crimea or somewhere else or elsewhere, they orientate themselves actually that here there will be a very big response, not specifically here, but in White House or in New York or elsewhere. The matter is that many famous politicians and the top echelon top echelon power of the United States who were dealing with the Ukrainian issues for the last years, including Victor Nuland. There are some other people in the state secretary or whatever. They said that the officers of the authority, they actually try to say that you're dealing with those actions in the Crimea, whatever else, but they are involved in such monstrous actions in the Crimea. I would like to quote the fresh publication this was published in March this year. One of the leaders of Jewish organization Eupatoria today is a writer of this letter. She lives now under the non-Ukrainian powers, and she writes. She told her personal feelings and fears of the Jewish community associated with the period post-Maidan period in Ukraine. When in the Crimea, they expected I mean, so to say, the train of friendship, so to say, with the Ukrainian nationalists. And according to her, those were one of the most scary days in her life, and they really were feared physical, let's say, elimination. And according to her, the words about the Crimea going to Russia, she was happy to support that, and they were the threat from Jewish population in Crimea. When I read those lines, I really I find it funny, and at the same time sad. I think the person invented something, you know, and she said, "We are blessed that nobody touched us, physical or in different way." Well, when we seriously address this issue, who was going in March of 2014 to touch the Jewish population in the Crimea? We have the situation when the Russian propaganda actually was instrumental in spreading those rumors or those fears which actually struck roots in the minds of the people up till now. It have this quotation from this woman who published her ideas or her feelings or thoughts not 2 years ago, but just a few days ago, that they were the brink of physical extermination in those days. This is what is related to the actions or to the events which took place in the Crimea. I witnessed in the first half of March 2014 here in Kiev how the Russian propaganda was operating in the Jewish street. It was unforgettable experience. When a TV, Russia Today channel, TV went to the Ashotar street where the central synagogue is located. I was there in those days because a synagogue housed a planned training which was conceived many months before that for self-defense. The Israeli instructors came there and they demonstrated some kind of the self-defense tricks. And when those TV people came to know that synagogue were preparing for self-defense, they actually brought the TV camera into inside the synagogue to film that, and then to televise it and to show that the Jews in Kiev are panicking and they are preparing for the Jewish pogroms, and you see they are trying to teach to be taught to learn some self-defense tricks. And the chief rabbi of Ukraine, Shymon Briman, actually he ousted those TV guys from the synagogue, and he did not allow them to film anything. But they actually stationed their camera opposite this building, and they were filming all those people who were leaving the doors of the synagogue. And one of the guys not only was leaving the synagogue, but actually he was run out of the synagogue. He had to attend to some of his business. When they actually edited this video, they actually had this kind of text. You see, the Jews are running for their life from the synagogue because they fear the physical extermination or being cancelled by somebody else. They did the special effort of this edit, and just you can see how high quality efforts they exert working on this material they filmed. They have this kind of half-a-minute filmage that one young rabbi, packs his suitcase and said, "I cannot stand it any longer here. I'm going to leave this country." They actually put those words in it to support this kind of the Jews running for their lives because of Kiev neo-fascism. But they do not show that this young rabbi is trying to run away from Simferopol in the Crimea in the first day when the Russians were there. He actually packed his luggage and he went all the way to Bratislava, to Slovakia. He's rabbi there. But the Russian TV televise that and to show that it, as if this happened in the Kiev synagogue, and they are training, teaching people how to defend themselves, and the people are just leaving the synagogue, running for their lives, and allegedly one of the young rabbis said that they can't stand it any longer here, you have to run away. So they take it, the kind of fake, and there is a lot example like that. Not only Russia Today and TV were instrumental in doing these fake reportages or filmage, And in 2015, when everybody came to understand what the TV channels were doing here, they were actually ousted from the country. And TV channel was trying to find. Their special correspondent in Kiev among the Israeli citizenship. They thought that if the Israeli citizen will come here to work for the channel, the Ukrainian authorities will not dare to blame him for the fake material, for the lies he is going to provide. And they offered the real big salaries, big payment for those lies. Believe me, the budget was really big for such cases. This is what pertains to the TV or media propaganda, how they try to use the Jewish theme in all those efforts. Also, I would like to further specify that Putin personally is not an anti-Semitic person. We do not have any evidence that he has been involved in some anti-Jewish actions or let's say some kind of statements. On the contrary, he always tries to show himself as a person who sympathizes with problems of Jews. And why? So even during when he was a student at KGB school, he said that they were a subject how the Israeli special services are involved in different operations, the Mossad, for example, and his very famous words to cancel everybody in the long john, in the toilet. I mean, this is not his words. He took it from one of the subject of the case of a well-known case of 1972, when they tried to liberate the hostages of the Belgium Sabena Airlines in the Berlin airport. The Israeli Special Operations Team not only liberated the hostages, but he actually shot the leader of the Arabi terrorists just in the toilet of on board the aircraft. And this actually was impressed in the memory of young Putin, and he remembered this impression to cancel or to kill everybody in the toilet. And he forgets that in Israel we have 1.5 million Russian-speaking citizens. Maybe he has some of his personal sentiments that the Russian-speaking population of Israel is some of his supporters. All this together resulted that the Russian official policy tried to involve Israel for them to switch over to their side, I mean to the Russian side. Over the last 2 years, we have a very clear attitude of the official Israel towards the Crimean conflict. What I'm talking about. Usually they say that Israel is a neutral country in the conflict between Russian Federation and Ukraine regarding the Crimea. This is true and not true at the same time. Why not true? Why it is not the case? Because several times there were several statements, very clear statements, that Israel was in for the restoration of territorial integrity of Ukraine, and they did not recognize the annexation of the Crimea by Russia. In itself, this statement is no neutral position. This is a clear statement of the clear position that Israel does not recognize the annexation or the capture of the Crimea. The official Israel does not try to let's say to kindle this topic. They just say that this is not our conflict. We try to be friendly with both Russia and Ukraine. It's very important for us to support a good relationship with both countries. That is why, we not try to be involved in this hell, let's say, this inferno. And Israel stopped to supply Russia with the UAVs, I mean the drones, and they did not start to deliver the same drones to Ukraine. So we tried to be neutral, not to supply those things, neither to Russia nor to Ukraine. Another point, in the Crimea and Simferopol, until the annexation, we had the honorary consular of council of Israel, businessman. When he supported this annexation, he immediately was deprived of this title of the honorary consul. In the consulate was closed in Crimea, and at the same time they opened this new honorary consulate of Israel in Lviv, in the western Ukraine. So it was a kind of gesture. You in Moscow believe Lviv or western Ukraine as the nest of Bandera, and Israel opens their honorary or the consulate to establish normal relations with these countries. What Israel did else with the Korean?
According to the request, to the initiative of the ambassador of Ukraine to Israel, Gennady Nadolenko, his colleague here in Kyiv, I mean the ambassador of Israel to Ukraine, Mr. Beltsarkovsky, had a speech 1 month ago appealing Israel businessmen that it's not desirable if they had some business in Crimea. He told it in such a form that we didn't give any state guarantees for your business there, and if you do it, it will be only your risk. And also the largest Israeli companies don't insure some business deals or investments in Crimea. Israel doesn't say it loudly, but there is a complete blockade from the point of view of Israel business of this peninsula. There are no investments. There is no technology transfer. Maybe some citizen of Israel opens some small shop or shashlik shop there. Nobody can control it. But serious Israeli business doesn't go to Crimea and won't come there for a long time. What else Israel is doing in positive way? There is a huge program on irrigation technologies in the southern regions of Ukraine, Kherson, Nikolaev region first of all, with the support of Canada government. 35,000 of farmers in Ukraine will get access to Israel technology on irrigation and other agricultural techniques. It's connected directly to the Crimea. In what way? If in Kherson region, on the border with Crimea, agriculture will flourish, and in Crimea there will be complete breach of the agriculture of Crimea, everybody will see that at the normal territory, the normal country, the development is fine because it's recognized all over the world. But at your peninsula, with some unclear status, there is such a mess. And I say I just need 1-2 minutes more. In February, there was a huge scandal connected to Israel and Crimea. MP of Israel Parliament, for the first time during these 2 years after Crimea conflict, visited Crimea. It was MP called Yaakov Margi from religious party Shat. This Margi visit is very interesting as it was one of the propaganda operations to give legitimacy to Crimean authorities with the help of the visit of Israel MP, plus he is the head of Knesset committee. he was in the local Jewish community, and then he had meeting arranged with Aksionov, and at the same day it was on Russian TV that Knesset delegation met the government of Crimea, and it's lie. And your ambassador of Ukraine in Israel had very rigid position regarding this act. It's a young ambassador, but he's one of the best in my memory, as I'm covering Ukraine-Israel relationships for 20 years already. But really, this is the most active ambassador during all this time. He made Speaker of Knesset to give his apologies for this visit, and Knesset sent explanations that we didn't give him authorities to go there. It was private visit. And this scandal and the fact that Ukrainian prosecutor office opened a case against Israel MP for visiting Crimea gave a new perspective to many people in Israel who thought that maybe after 2 years everything is quiet and now it's possible to visit Crimea, to visit these authorities that are not recognized anywhere in the world. But it happened to be that the scandal became a count of cold shower for those Ukrainian politicians, for those Israeli politicians that were thinking about this direction. So in general, the position of Israel is neutral, but it is focused on the development and support of Ukraine in practical sense. It's a huge program on medical training for Ukrainian doctors. It's a requalification program for Ukrainian psychologists and military psychologists to work on rehabilitation issues for injured people and people from ATO areas. Also, there is a huge irrigation program of the southern regions of Ukraine. And of course, the huge important factor is that inside Israel people, there is a kind of sporadic support. There are groups of activists supporting Ukraine. First of all, a social organization called Israeli Friends of Ukraine, headed by Anna Zharova. They made dozens of projects in support of Ukraine, plus supplies of tons, literally, of humanitarian aid and stuff for kids and things for the injured soldiers. And I saw in Tel Aviv, in one of the hall, I could see Israeli guys and girls sewing protected nets for the soldier as a kind of sincere desire of Israeli people. And I finish now, and I'm ready to answer your questions. Interfax Ukraine, could you tell us, please? Did Russian Federation succeed in changing sympathies of Israeli people in their actions in Crimea and on the territory of Ukraine? I can see a very interesting phenomenon in Israel. There is a growth of sympathies to Putin personally. Why does it happen? The image was created in Ivrit-speaking environment of Israeli people that Putin is a kind of powerful, cool solution of all problems. And when Israeli people see Israeli government to be weak or soft or liberal. They start joking in media that Putin would do something else here. He has image of powerful leader. And some people would like our management to take this perception of reality from him. But for the last 2 years, due to the last events, due to Maidan, due to the war at the east, as minimum, Israeli people started knowing about Ukraine much more. Before these years, it wasn't much information among Israeli people because they didn't really understand the difference between Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. But for the time being, Ivrit-speaking environment understands that this guy is not from Russia, this guy is from Ukraine. These countries are different. Some time ago, the exhibition was made in Tel Aviv. The exhibition of the photos, and one of the participants, Margot, is with us today. In parallel ways, there were photographs, Israel and Ukrainian photographs from ATO area. And I heard Israeli people to come and to admit that this country is fighting like we do. This country is suffering like we do. Their young people are living real lives. There is romantics, but there are combats as well. There is a struggle for their freedom. Israeli people started knowing much more about Ukraine and about their sympathies. There were some attempts of the surveys and public polls. How Israeli people are divided on their attitude to Russian-Ukrainian conflict, and the data was there are two different opinions, 25% are for Ukraine and other 25% are for Russia, but other people, this 50%, they don't care or they're neutral. They're saying it's not our problem, it's not our conflict. The polls are like that. Forbes magazine, could you tell us about business mode? Does suffer business because of these PR actions of Russia? A couple of months ago there was a story about trade of Ukrainian eggs. There was some mess in media. Maybe there are some other example. How do you struggle in economic aspect against Russian propaganda? I even made a headline that Israel beat Ukrainian on the eggs, on the balls. There was a huge scandal with the Ukrainian eggs and their supply to our country, but the scandal wasn't connected to Russian propaganda. It was connected to the competition in the Israeli market. Other suppliers from other countries were trying to spoil reputation of Ukrainian eggs, to stop supplies from Ukraine, and to gain some money on this situation. There was no politics in this situation, just business, just money. In general, your events, these military actions, this unsolved conflict at Donbass, it really spoils the business image of Ukraine, because Israeli people look all that, and without going deeper to details, they can see that there is one more shelling on the snow. It's better to wait and not to go into big business with this country. Let them solve their own problems first. That's clear that business likes quiet life. It's like peaceful life, and while we still have this knife in the back of Ukraine from the side of the east, the business is afraid to go to this country. It really spoils the image and business climate of the country. Next question, please be brief.
Churchill once said that the fascists of the future will be called anti-fascist. And Michel Foucault, this is recently who wrote 4 different poems about fascism. Speaking about the joy of the average Jewish person, how their attitude not toward the kind of anti-Semitism, but the sentiments in Russia and Ukraine. Briefly answering a question, in Israel, they understand, if you can talk about some Jewry, generally speaking, they understand only too well what kind of regime, political regime, is now they have in the Russian Federation. Although it's kind of tightening the answer to say, or the deprivation of freedom of speech, whatever else, they understand that, and all the political technologies whose articles I can read in different newspapers. This is something which has nothing to do with the Jewish ethnic group, national groupings. Everybody understands what Putin Russia means. At the same time, everybody say, well, we cannot, negate that or neglect the situation where there's nuclear power, and then start to say we survived the Stalinism or Stalin's Russia, we can survive with Putin's Russia as well. And it seems to me that this is a distant actually, we are talking about a distant future when we can find a resolution to the situation. Well, but generally speaking, the attitude toward Ukraine is rather positive. I can see that the Putin invite the chief rabbi of Russia and ask him, did you no, not Ukraine, to Russia. I mean, the Putin person who asked the chief rabbi whether there's enough, let's say, bread, Jewish bread for the Crimean population. And they say, okay, those are my people, my guys, nobody touches them. And the local authorities in Russia, they receive those signals from the Kremlin and say, if the master himself, has a very good attitude toward Jews, then we have to do same in our specific localities. But this situation is problematic because everything depends upon the personality of the person number one. If tomorrow the person will change his mood or issue the order to do something different, all those officials will easily prosecute the Jews. Tomorrow, Dmitry, you actually you praised the efforts, or let's say the ambassador of Ukraine to Israel, and you commented on the Putin's efforts. What can you say about the information policy of Ukraine in Israel regarding the Jewish community in Ukraine, or let's say how their coverage was going on today in Ukraine? In Israel, they have all the Ukrainian TV. They receive that through satellite dish, and all the TV packages include Ukrainian TV channels. That's why there is no problem with watching the Ukrainian channels in Israel. They have a direct access to Ukrainian TV broadcasting. Whatever happens in your country, we can watch it. Same story, the same can be said about the Russian TV channels. They are also accessible. That's why the Russian-speaking population of Israel, they actually absorb both Russian propaganda information, but also they have a chance to watch the Ukrainian TV channels. Speaking in principle, Ukraine does have even 10% of the resources which Russia spends on their propaganda, and this kind of competition is not the equal rivalry we have here. Russia spends millions upon millions on information policy, including TV propaganda. Ukraine doesn't have just enough money or financial resources to do the same. That's why whatever Ukraine can do, just use some kind of enthusiasm of the people or friends of Ukraine living in Israel. It's very often the case when this kind of the human enthusiasm as could be much more efficient than some kind of the ordered propaganda coming from the Kremlin, from Russia. Last question. Kirkosikovsky. We were talking about the Middle East realities. Could you speaking about the realities of the Middle East, the support of the sponsorship on the Russian part, support given by Russia to the terrorists in the Middle East area. If you're talking about the military establishment of Israel, I understand, regarding partnership of Ukraine. So this kind of triangle, Ukraine, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. All this would be very nice, but in reality, this is kind of the wishful thinking. Because Russia in the Middle East, if we're talking about the Middle East, they have their real troops stationed there, real resources. What's going on in Syria, for example, For example, Israel is part of the Middle East. What they see there, they can see that just a couple of kilometers away from its frontier, there are the Russian aircraft or fighters or bombers flying there. Ukrainian aircraft do not fly there. So who we must take into account? The aircraft which realistically fly over this territory and boom the territory on the Holland Heights, or on the beautiful, peaceful Ukraine, which is involved in its own problems and which has to take care of the front line in their territory, and not in the Middle East. In the Middle East, we have Russian army, Russian military equipment. So we are, and Israel cannot select Russia or Ukraine just for the simple reason. The reality is like that. Russia spends millions upon millions of dollars, and they supply weaponry, rockets, entire craft system to our enemies. All we can do just to try to monitor those deliveries, those supplies, and try to come to the agreement with Putin. Maybe the Russia should reduce their supplies, maybe not supply to the outspoken killers, but some kind of, let's say, more or less the killers or murderers who can be we can negotiate the matters with who, whatever. So then that's my answer to your question. Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our briefing. Thank you, and see you again. All the best to you. This brings us to the end of the working day of the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Thank you.